The other day I posted a video here about the possible side effects of intermittent fasting. Today I want to do another video related to fasting. In this video I'm going to talk about something that's rarely discussed in relation to fasting, which is the stages of fasting. What happens in the body from the first couple of hours to the fast, and from the beginning of the fast as you progress. What changes occur in the body that kind of make fasting work, so to speak. All right, let's talk about when you eat a meal. First of all, let's say, to compare what happens to not eating a meal. We'll talk about what happens in the body when you actually eat a meal. In the hours following a meal, blood glucose or blood sugar levels rise, as does insulin levels. Insulin not only helps to shuttle amino acids into muscle. A lot of bodybuilders are aware of that. It's got an anti-catabolic effect. Insulin, by the way, people think I've seen videos where they call insulin the most anabolic hormone, but that's a misnomer because it's more anti-catabolic than anabolic. Insulin only is involved in increasing muscle protein synthesis in the presence of a large amount of amino acids in the blood. Most of the time, insulin is anti-catabolic. That is, it helps prevent muscle protein breakdown, which of course is very important because muscle growth or hypertrophy consists of a balance between muscle protein breakdown and muscle growth or anabolic and catabolic. There's got to be a balance between the two, and anything that favors an anti-catabolic effect or the prevention of muscle breakdown pushes the scale, let's say, towards anabolic effects. So you could say in that sense, insulin is indirectly anabolic. But besides helping to shuttle amino acids into muscle, it also, of course, its most famous role is to push glucose into muscle too. When insulin goes up, it tends to get glucose out of the blood and into the muscle. It also promotes liver glycogen synthesis. Insulin, that's the reason of years ago they would tell you when you have a protein drink to make sure that you have some simple carbohydrates with it, because even though, let's say, something like whey protein alone, because of certain what they call glucogenic amino acids in the whey, they alone stimulate insulin release. By adding a simple or quick-acting form of carbohydrate, you raise the insulin much more, and you get a 37% greater synthesis of glycogen because of the increased insulin that emanates from the carbohydrates. Subsequent research showed that really that wasn't that important for actual muscle building. It's more important for somebody involved in, let's say, endurance sports who needs a rapid glycogen replenishment effect. A lesser known effect of insulin is that it shuts off the appetite after a meal. People don't know that. But insulin in the brain actually turns off appetite stimulating mechanisms. And this explains why when you consume fructose, fructose does not cause an immediate insulin release. Eventually, it's turned into glucose, but that takes a while. There's different enzymes involved in the liver that process fructose, and as a result, fructose does not cause an immediate insulin release. Because of that, it doesn't turn off your appetite, and there's a tendency to eat too much of it. And when you eat too much fructose, you have problems such as a buildup of fat in the liver, which is called non-alcoholic fatty liver. It's a precursor for liver cirrhosis and eventual liver failure. But that's an interesting fact that insulin after a meal helps to turn off the appetite. How much insulin is released after a meal depends on the composition of the nutrients in the meal. I mean, you don't have to be a nutrition expert to know that carbohydrates always stimulate the greatest release of insulin, although some people would argue that protein does too. Certain amino acids in protein actually are known to stimulate as much of an insulin release as sugar, but the fate of the carbohydrate and protein is divergent. In other words, what I mean by that is, even though certain amino acids stimulate an insulin release, you don't get fat from eating protein. You don't. I don't care what anyone says. This is something that's more theoretical than realistic. You'll see in the biochemistry books, because each gram of protein has 4 calories per gram, and any excess calories from any source is capable of stimulating body fat synthesis, the thinking is too much protein makes you fat. Okay, that is strictly theoretical. It makes sense from a biochemical standpoint, but all I can say is, in my 58 years of working out and dealing with literally thousands and thousands of people, bodybuilders, athletes, all sorts, I've seen intakes of protein that exceed 700-800 grams a day, and I've yet to see a single person, male or female, ever gain a single ounce of fat from eating protein. As far as carbohydrates, just the opposite. Just about everybody I know who eats excess carbohydrates gains body fat from it. And there's people that will argue that too. As I've written in my Applied Metabolics newsletter, there's a school of thought that no carbohydrates don't make you fat. I can't help laughing. This is so ridiculous that they say this. All the excess carbohydrates are oxidized in the liver. That's what they say. That's simply not true. I mean, if that were true, why is it that about 8 out of 10 competitive bodybuilders use low carbohydrate diets? I mean, if a low calorie diet that contained a substantial amount of carbohydrate was the best diet for losing fat, why wouldn't they use that diet? Because why? Because low carbohydrate diets have a proven track record. They do stimulate the loss of excess body fat, and they do it pretty quickly. So anyway, I'm going off on a tangent here, but as far as, of course, as I was saying, we're talking about a meal now. Eating carbs stimulates or elicits the greatest release of insulin, and so does certain amino acids, but it's divergent. I just explained that. Many people, however, due to insulin insensitivity problems, they call that prediabetes, they tend to promote a greater than needed release of insulin, or in other words, hyperinsulinemia. Those are the people that tend to gain body fat when they consume excess carbohydrates. And again, there's a bunch of people that deny this. They point to studies showing that even people with hyperinsulinemia do not get fat from eating carbohydrates. I say bullshit. Bullshit. That's completely false. All right, I'm just one person. That's an anecdotal information. I can only say when I competed even today, the only thing that really puts fat on my body is excess carbohydrates. I don't get fat if I eat fat without carbohydrates. I don't get fat to get fat. So I ignore those. I don't care what they say. I don't care what studies they point to. I live in the real world, not the ivory tower world of some of these academics. And believe me, I'm a great believer in science, but sometimes, it doesn't match the real world. What can I say? After eating a meal, levels of a protein called ghrelin decline rapidly. Ghrelin is an interesting substance. It's basically the most appetite-stimulating substance produced in the body. The body produces ghrelin to basically keep you alive, because when you eat a meal, ghrelin drops immediately, but in between meals, it gradually increases, and as it increases, it stimulates hunger, so you have a desire to eat. Nature wants you to eat to keep you alive. So ghrelin drops when you eat, it increases when you don't eat. Ghrelin, by the way, they found out years ago, is it actually interacts with growth hormone receptors. Ghrelin actually stimulates growth hormone. I wouldn't take ghrelin as a growth hormone stimulant, but the so-called growth hormone secretagogues, peptides, which I've talked about in past videos, the original ones were basically analogs of ghrelin. They were basically ghrelin with slight changes. And the reason they worked is because ghrelin interacts with the growth hormone receptor. That's just an interesting side effect. When ghrelin goes down, another protein secreted by fat cells, what they call a adipokine called leptin, goes up. Leptin travels to the brain, and it basically informs the brain that you're getting enough food, so it turns off the appetite. That's what happens there when you eat a meal. During the first few hours of fasting, things start to change. After about 5 hours of eating, the body switches to after 5 hours of eating, if you don't eat anything, the body switches to an early fasting state that lasts up to 18 hours after eating. During this period, blood glucose and insulin levels decline, and the body begins to tap into liver glycogen to maintain blood glucose levels. That, by the way, is the main function of liver glycogen, to always maintain blood glucose levels within a certain narrow range. If no carbohydrates are consumed, the liver glycogen content will become depleted, usually in about 12 hours with no food intake. When that happens, your body begins to tap into fat stores as a source of energy. That's the entire basis of low-carb diets. In other words, when you deplete liver glycogen, your body starts to turn to another alternate source of energy, which is fat. This is also the entire basis of doing fasted aerobics. The thought is that if you do aerobics when you first wake up in the morning, your glycogen levels are low. So if you don't eat anything and go right to aerobics, your body will tap into fat more readily. That's a kind of debatable issue. Some studies show it works, some studies show it doesn't. But I've talked about this in my Applied Metabolics newsletter if you want more detail on that. There's an outside chance at this time, meaning like hours after you're not eating, that amino acids will be degraded and converted into glucose in the liver. There's a possibility. It doesn't happen with everybody. It can happen with some people. Now, what happens when you actually go into the fasted state? The fasted state begins about 18 hours to 2 days after beginning a fast. By this point, all remaining liver glycogen stores have been depleted, and the body begins to rely on stored fat and amino acids stored muscle as energy sources. However, the greater breakdown of fat leads to the production of ketones, or ketone bodies, which are metabolic byproducts of fat metabolism. Ketones are familiar to anyone who follows a ketogenic diet. Ketogenic diet increases ketones. That's why it's called the ketogenic diet. Ketones can be used as an energy source by most tissues and organs in the body, including brain and muscle. They impart anti-catabolic effects in muscle and also tend to blunt appetite. In fact, that's the reason why when I was a competitive bodybuilder, the only successful fat loss diets for me were either very low carbohydrate, meaning less than 100 grams a day, and I always started with a ketogenic diet where I had literally zero carbs. I lived on meat and eggs for about 7 weeks, so that kicked off my fat loss. Because what happened was, I got into ketosis after maybe a day or so, and it was a little tough for the first week. But once the ketones started kicking in, I had to literally force myself to eat. That's how little appetite I had. I had to force myself to eat, and made dieting. I mean, dieting's never fun, but it would have been a lot harder if I was really hungry and starving, which I wasn't. This allowed me to stay on these kind of diets for as long as 3 or 4 months and losing all excess body fat, dropped it all. When I tried to do the so-called low-calorie, high-carb diet, couldn't last 2 days on it. I was starving, voraciously hungry. Hey, it works for some people. It didn't work for me. By the way, ketones can also be increased, as I said, by ketogenic diets and also by drinking coffee. Just drinking coffee actually increases ketones. Contrary to popular belief, most styles of intermittent fasting do not promote extensive ketosis. Why? Because extensive ketosis usually begins 24 hours after starting a fast. And most intermittent fasting regimes, they have like the time restricted eating regime where you eat only within a certain 8-hour period. Others you fast for 8 hours and blah blah blah. But most of them don't last for 24 hours, and that's when extensive ketosis begins. The chances of ketosis, however, the chances of ketosis are much greater if you start the fast with a partially depleted liver glycogen store. For example, let's say you run a ketogenic or low-carb diet, and you worked out and your glycogen stores are low, and then you go on a fast, the odds are you'll get into ketosis much faster than usual. If the fast continues past 48 hours, you enter the state of starvation. It doesn't sound good, does it? The production of ketones continues to rise. In fact, one of the main ketone that rises in the blood is called beta-hydroxybutyrate, or BHB. Weird effect of BHB is that it gives you a feeling of real peace, inner peace. You feel very relaxed. You feel good. This is why a lot of people that go on extended fasts talk about how it kind of, makes them feel less stressed and they have a sense of well-being. It's actually because of the extreme rise of this stuff called beta-hydroxybutyrate, one of the three ketone bodies that occurs when ketones are released. The production of ketones continues to rise, as does gluconeogenesis, which is a process that converts amino acids, glycerol from fat, and lactate into glucose to maintain blood glucose levels. This is one of the reasons why carbohydrates are not required in the human diet, because your body can make all the glucose it needs through this gluconeogenesis process that converts amino acids, glycerol from fat, lactate that you produce when you work out, for example. All of it can be converted into glucose in the liver through gluconeogenesis, and that maintains blood. All your body cares about is blood glucose levels. Doesn't care where it comes from. So there's no actual physical, regardless of what you might see on some stupid YouTube video or any dumb article, there is no actual requirement for carbohydrates in the diet. And I'm not saying that everyone should not eat any carbohydrates. What I'm saying is there's no actual human requirement. That's all I'm saying. During the total fast, I mean the later hours, or during the starvation stage, I should call it, the breakdown of branched-chain amino acids in muscle greatly accelerates at this time, making a loss of muscle greater. In other words, after, let's say, 48 hours on a fast, your body really starts to dig into the branched-chain amino acids that are stored in muscle. Those are the first to go, and you will start to lose muscle. So it's something to... however, the greater production of ketones, because of the anti-catabolic effect, has a sparing action on the muscle loss. So if you, let's say you go on a total fast for 3 days, which is pretty long, you might lose some muscle, but you're not going to lose as much as you might think, because the ketones that are produced after 24 hours are sparing the muscle. However, if you go past 3 days, and I've read of some idiots on the video, I just saw one the other day where this guy talks about how he once a year he goes on a 5-day total fast where he eats no food at all. After 3 days, he's burning tons of muscle. Tons. That is absolutely completely contraindicated for anybody who's interested in fitness, health. Well, I shouldn't say health, because believe it or not, it actually is healthy, in certain respects, which I talked about in other videos, such as autophagy, blah, blah, blah. But the point is, from a bodybuilding standpoint, very long fasts are very catabolic. There's no way around it. In fact, this is why when you go on any kind of fast, even an intermittent fast, they tell you to ingest some protein as soon as possible. You don't have to load up, like, you don't have to, down 300 grams of protein at once, but you want to ingest protein as soon as possible, because, again, people vary in their catabolic responses to fasts. So you want to supply some amino acids to turn off any possible catabolic effects as soon as possible after you end the fast, especially if you're involved in bodybuilding or sports or any kind of physical activity. As I said, fasts that go on for 3 days or more lead to muscle loss, and they're not recommended for anyone who's interested in gaining muscle or strength. So that's basically what happens in the body when you fast. I've talked about the health benefits of fasting. I believe that short-term fasts, such as intermittent fasting, or alternate day fasting, where you eat normally one day, fast the next, or you, let's say, eat a certain amount of calories one day and reduce calories by 500, 600, or 700 the next day. That's kind of a semi-fast. These things are all safe and pretty healthy. They won't cause any muscle loss. And I think that they're the best way to go. I don't believe, let me just say, I don't think that extended fasts are a good idea for most people. And when I say extended fast, I'm talking anything past 3 days, or even 2 days is really pushing it. I think that just, again, just the short-term couple hours, maximum, let's say 18 hours, is safe. It's not going to cause any muscle loss, and it will impart all the health benefits. That's about the best way to do it. If you want more information on nutrition, exercise science, hormonal therapy, anti-aging research you can use today, supplement science, which supplements work, which ones don't, ergogenic aids, hormonal therapy, women's health and fitness. All of this is covered in my Applied Metabolics newsletter, www.appliedmetabolics.com. There is no other digital publication that covers as many topics as I do. It's 40 to 50 pages every month. There's no advertisements. It includes the current evidence-based research on a number of topics, but more importantly, it also includes my 58 years of constant study and empirical knowledge, things I've learned in the gym that you can only learn from experience. I impart that in my newsletter. It could save you a lot of time, help you avoid a lot of mistakes related to nutrition and training, all in my Applied Metabolics newsletter. When you subscribe, I'll send you an invitation to join my private Applied Metabolics Facebook page, where each day I post new information on nutrition, exercise science, general medicine. I also have an email portal on my Applied Metabolics webpage. We're current subscribers only. I don't accept questions from unsolicited questions from non-subscribers. Current subscribers can ask me short questions about maybe something they read in the newsletter or anything else that comes to mind. I'll be happy to answer if you're a current subscriber. You're welcome to leave comments under these videos. The odds are that I will not be able to answer them, but anyone else is welcome to answer comments from other people. That's fine with me. And that's about it. If you want to have the best friend you'll ever have. Oh, I got to say this. I was on the web earlier, and I was watching a couple of these so-called informative science videos. I watched about 6 of them. And I got to tell you, that acronym that you use in text, SMH, shaking my head. That's what I was doing when I was watching these videos. The information they give out is so bad and so wrong. Like the guy who talks about fasting for 5 days. I mean, this is not only stupid, it's actually dangerous. The steroid information is horrendous. I mean, I see these clowns who anoint themselves steroid experts giving out steroid regimes that are not based on any science at all. And these schmucks that are interviewing, like they look on these guys like they're the font of knowledge. These guys are clowns. They don't know anything. So what's my point? My point is, if you want to look at YouTube videos, and this is a YouTube video, but I'm telling you the truth. I have no axes to grind other than all I'm trying to do is tell people about my newsletter. I'm not trying to sell you any products here, but be very wary of these YouTube videos because based on the things I've seen over the last year or so, I would say that 98% of them are garbage or provide false or incorrect information. Take it from me, from a guy who studied this for like over 50 years. Don't listen to this stuff. I mean, I get a kick out of the videos. My personal ones I like to get a kick out of are the ones that talk about how you could live forever. There's certain things, certain supplements you can take, or new techniques that will allow you to live, 1,000 years. I mean, geez, come on, man. Anybody with half a brain could see through that crap. I mean, anyway, I'll leave it at that. If you want to have the best friend you'll ever have, go to your local shelter, adopt a dog. Take care. Thanks for listening.